Thank you for joining me and the Software Source Code Interest Group here in this room. Unfortunately, I'm the only co-chair on site, but we have a co-chair online and one who excuses himself not being able to be here on site today. My name is Moran Greenpeter. If you don't know me, some of you don't know me because I see many new faces. I am a co-chair of the Software Source Code Interest Group, but I'm also working for Software Heritage as a software engineer and a project manager. I have also different hats on. I'm with the European project Fair Impact and the other European project Fair Call for EOS. Maybe some of you have heard of these European projects in other settings. And I'm also part of the project management committee of the Code Meta initiative, which is taking care of metadata for software. And so today, a bit something before we start, a bit of housekeeping. This session is recorded. So whatever you say on site, online, is being recorded. We have the collaborative notes where you can, and I truly ask you to go to the notes because the working session we have today is on this document. Please check in by putting your name, affiliation, location, if you're online or on site, and you don't have to put your email or social media, but it would be nice if you want to stay in contact. Know that if you put your email here, it doesn't mean that you are now part of the Software Source Code Interest Group. You need to join the group if you want to. It's very easy on the RDA website. Maybe with a show of hands, who here in this room is part of the Software Source Code Interest Group already? Yeah. Who? Okay, not as much as I expected, but I'm happy to have our people here. Maybe online you can also say in the chat who's on the Software Source Code Interest Group, and you can join the group. Feel free to join. Another thing to say that I prefer questions to be inserted directly into the collaborative notes, because then I will see the questions. In the chat in the Zoom, I won't see it. If someone voluntarily can copy the questions into the Q&A, which is available in the notes, go ahead. Yes, come in, find a seat. You can come in front. There's a lot of seats here. Thank you. I know that it's a difficult session just after lunch. Maybe we hadn't enough time to have coffee, so I know I'm in dangerous territory, and I want to wake you up. So I will try to wake you up in a second, but first I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is metadata. And I imagine that you are here because you're interested in software, or you are interested in metadata, or you are interested in both. And I really appreciate you coming here, and we'll discover together some excellent or interesting initiatives that are talking about metadata in software. And so for this session, we have first a short introduction to the group, which is necessary because most of you are not in the Software Source Code Interest Group. Then a short update on the community efforts that we have around that you might want to follow. We have a larger segment to discover the research software metadata guidelines and the Fair Impact software metrics. This is part of the Fair Impact European project. And then there's the working session, but I will try to get you working before then with the activity, which I called Unraveling the Magic of Software Metadata. Okay, I know that you maybe came here just because of this title. I hope that I can meet this expectation. Now, the Software Source Code Interest Group was created in 2017, so a long time ago. It's a forum to discuss research software inside RDA, which is mainly for data, but data needs software. For this group, we have 3 co-chairs with Neil Chu Hong, Julia Collins, and myself. And we have, with this interest group, spawned 2 working groups, the Fair for Research Software Working Group and the Software Source Code Identification Working Group. And both have outcomes that are maintained by this group, the software source code interest group. And so you have links to these outputs here, which are interesting if you're interested in identification and FAIR for research software. One of the items on the list of things that we need to cover today is an update for the FAIR for research software working group, and kind of an update. I will go over that in a bit. Here is the list of members. So there are a lot of members in the interest group. Many people are interested in software. I hope you will join us and know that what does the interest group mean is just that we discuss topics, exchange information in the mailing list, and meet in plenaries. And this is nice. And I hope that we can maybe see if there's a need of another working group on future topics. Now, why software source code? Well, the knowledge is in the code. The knowledge is not in the executable. Even though they use the executable, the information, what is doing the software is in the code, and it provides a view into the mind of the designer. And it's very important to take care of it. So this is why we have this software source code interest group. And then why research software? Sometimes, well, most of the time, research software is neglected alongside articles and data. And we want to build in this open science space, we want to build the open software source code pillar, so that we consider software with articles and with data. Now, a definition that was provided by the FAIR for Research Software Working Group as part of its outputs is that research software is created during the research process for a research purpose, which is different from the software which is used in research, and those are two different type things. Okay. Moving on to the first activity for you is what brings you here. Now, people online, and maybe some of you in the room who have their computer open, you can go into the link, and there is this place where you can write down why are you here, what brings you here, and to specifically this session of research software metadata. And I know that it seems like very difficult at this moment because everybody's silent and I'm talking, but I really want you, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do it, to find your neighbor and tell them, why are you here? What brings you to this research software metadata session? Yes, come and be a neighbor for someone else. That's a good thing. I know you might be shy, you might not know the person next to you. You can introduce yourself, tell your name, go ahead, please. It will be, I have a tough crowd today. Go ahead to find a neighbor. You have 2 minutes to go. We are going to stop this first question. Thank you, everyone, for your vivid participation. Yes, yes, thank you very much. Thank you. I think you woke up. I thought you were sleeping just a few minutes ago, and I heard that you were okay, that you're not sleeping. Good. I'm happy to see that. Very nice. Thank you very much. I'm moving on to our next segment, which is an update on community efforts. And I really like using this pyramid. It's a Brian Nosek about culture change. And we want, as part, I don't know if everyone wants that, but myself and in this space of the software social interest group, we want to make software a first-class output. And there is a lot of traction to that goal and beautiful initiatives that already started. You should wait to the end of the play for the picture. I will start using from the bottom up. The bottom is the infrastructure with making it possible. We have in this space European projects, infrastructure in the scholarly ecosystem. We have, of course, a software heritage where I'm from, and we have a lot of initiatives that are taking form to make this possible, to make the fact that software should be a first-class output in the different infrastructures. Then we have the Make It Easy. So I don't know if you heard of those two initiatives called Meta and citation file formats. This is a way to make it easier to help software become first-class output. If you haven't heard about those, check it out. We don't have the time to cover each one of these during this session. Also, I want you to work. So then we have Make It Normative, have communities to help boost those initiatives and boost software as a first-class output. And RDA is part of these communities that can make this normative with the different outputs that are out there. That should be adopted so that it is normative. Then we have Make It Rewarding, and there are initiatives to reward researchers with their software development. We have in France the award for free software in the open science space, but there are other initiatives that are going towards this rewarding option. And finally, we have make it required with policymakers and funders. I didn't say it, it's noted on the slide, but this list is not exhaustive, but it shows that there are people around the table that wants this goal to happen and are driving it towards this goal. Okay. One of the things here written but with no link is the FAIR for Research software output, and we are going towards this part of our session, which is a short, very short. If you don't know what is written in this output, this session will not give you the answer, but I will give you a few items so you can know a little bit more. So it was a working group that ended the journey in May 2022. A large working group with not only RDA, but with Force 11 and RISA. RISA, it's not written on the slide, but it's the Research Software Alliance, for those that do not know RISA. It was a great community effort with a lot of members and active contributors, led by 9 co-chairs, so a very big group, a lot of effort to do that. And very high level definition of the FAIR for Research software principles, difficult to implement with this output, so it's a high level document. And then my question to you, that you can do only online, you don't talk to your neighbor, you can if you want, but I will give for that 2-3 free minutes. Maybe I will ask that with a show of hands here in the room. Are you familiar with these principles? So you have kind of 4 or 5 categories where you don't know what's fair, like is fair, find an incredible response for repeatable subjects. That's very last night. I've kind of find another acronym. This morning there was another one with AI. What was it? Full AI ready. I love that. I should have changed that slide for full AI ready. Well, first, with we won't do the show of hands because it might put people uncomfortable. Online, if you can put your option, do you know the acronym? Let's start with, do you know the acronym FAIR for Research Software? Is that known to you? Normally people that are implementing already the principles, they will check this box around. So let's say, do you know the acronym? Know the acronym. Okay, good. Know the concepts behind the acronym? Okay. Read the output. Okay, that's normal. That's logic. Implemented the principle in another output. Okay, so that was fun or not fun? I don't know. You tell me. If you don't know the principles, there's a lot of information online. The co-chairs of this effort, we have 2 in the room here with Dan and Leila. I don't know if we have anyone else in the room. I didn't check before. And we are still doing efforts to bring that into the community. So there's a lot of presentation. This is actually a outdated, I would say, presentation. If you're interested, check it out. Check the output. Check the videos. There's information out there. No, that's not what. No. Okay. I didn't want to play that. Okay. So last thing to say about the FAIR for Research software effort. We, Software Source Code Interest Group, are the maintenance group for this output. And normally we have set up fixed time span to not change this output for 2 years, which will end in 2024. And then maybe, it's not a maybe, there will be a broadly consultative and open review which will be conducted by Risa, I hope. That's what was written in the maintenance and retirement plan. So if you are interested in contributing, stay tuned for that part. Now, there are a lot of adoption examples, and normally this slide was with the list of adoption examples, but I didn't want to put too much information in one slide. So I only used one example, this example from the biomedical community, which is very nice to see. One of the adoption and implementation. We are always seeking for examples on adoption. So go to the working document that you have open on your labs or online. And if you have examples that you want to share with us, please do share. We are always, we love it when you share with us information. Okay. This part is ended, and I think that I will get you to sleep now, because I have a long segment to discuss what is research software metadata guidelines and the fair research software metrics. So just to check in, before going there, yeah, let's do that. Do you have any questions about the software source code interest group? I don't know if we can get questions. I'm looking at you, yeah. If there's questions about the working group, well, no, sorry, interest group, because we are not a working group, interest group. Are there here in the room any questions? This is the time to ask questions about the interest group. Okay. Yes. Yeah, a microphone is going to come to you. Thank you very much.
How often do you meet or convene?
Is it working? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Go.
Hello.
Yeah.
How often do you convene or meet?
We are not meeting outside of the plenaries. So we are meeting now. This is like a session, or a meeting session of the software source code infrastructure. It's not like it is. We're not meeting outside of this usually. Well, we never met outside of plenaries, the software source code interest group. Okay. It's really for interest, it's not for working. So most working groups have these monthly, weekly, quarterly meetings to do the work, but here it's really for your benefit of sharing information. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we dive into presentation mode? No other. I might skip the presentation. No, I'm kidding. We'll do the presentation. You might be interested in things that will be said, and I will try to do it quick and not to overwhelm you with information. I don't want to do that. So let's start for a bit of context. What is Fair Impact? For those who don't know, Fair Impact is a European project as part of the European Open Science Cloud, called also EOSC in short. If you don't know it, that's the time to discover something new, because they are driving European efforts toward better, fair, and better open science, not just fair, open science. That's the goal. There's a lot of partners on this European project, which is a very big project. We, Software Heritage and INRIA is a partner in this Fair Impact project, and we act as representing software in there. There are different, so the goal of Fair Impact is expanding fair solution across EOSC. So I've explained EOSC, European Open Science Cloud. There's a lot of things happening there. For software, we are present in different work packages, for persistent identifiers, for metadata and ontologies, and for metrics. The presentation today is specifically in the two work packages that I've circled with the metadata and metrics. I've shown you this pyramid, but now it's just that. There's two goals for the effort in Fair Impact on that respect. The one, to develop research software metadata guidelines, which were published in June 2023, and the metrics for research software that will be published at the end of October, if I'm not wrong. I think it will be published at the end of October. And it will hopefully drive some adoption and get us towards our goal, which is make software first-class output, but also provide guidance and measure fairness. A timeline that resembles the design resembles the one you saw already, but it's completely different. You have a different timeline starting from June 2022, when the Fair Impact project has been launched. We had a very nice session in March 2023. Maybe some of you were at the session. I know that some did come to this research software workshop. It was co-located with the RDA P20. The input in this session helped driven this effort writing the guidelines. There was a community consultation in May 2023, and then the publication. Now we are in this dissemination period for the RSMD guidelines. And why are we doing it? For whom are we doing that? For different stakeholders. So here we have 4 different types of stakeholders and maybe some of the use cases that are needed to make software first-class output with archiving and referencing software, finding, getting credit. These use cases are not specific to metadata, but are more broad in this space. Then we have the laboratories and teams, tracking software, producing reports, maintaining web pages. Also, a lot of metadata needs to get into that use cases. We have the research organization that wants to know the software assets for different reasons. And finally, the curators that are hands-on with the metadata, verifying and curating the software, providing documentation and monitoring research teams. The next slide seems a big jump from the first one, from the one before. It's from the work we've done during the work on FAIR for research software, showing that FAIR is probably not enough for software. But even if you apply all the FAIR for research software principles, you'll get until a place here on the slide, which is not the maximum and ideal place. And so we've decided with the research software metadata guidelines to move towards the ideal solution, which is partly fair, but not just fair. And so to explain this slide, you can see a software instance with the PID metadata documentation license source code, and below the executable part and other items that are needed, that are necessary for reproducibility, for example. And there is a session this week about reproducibility. I'm not sure on which day it is. Thursday? Thursday. So check out your agenda if you are interested in reproducibility. It's also a very important topic when you talk about software. What is at stake is that we want to archive, reference, cite, and describe. In this session, we are talking almost exclusively about describe because we are talking about metadata. But in those other pillars of the that are here on the slide, we need also metadata. The research. So coming back to research software metadata guidelines. I don't have the time today to show you all that is written in these guidelines, even if I really want to. I think, again, overwhelming with information. So we have this slide explaining what we have done. We have created 7 aspects that you are seeing on the slide with the general metadata requirement, accessibility and preservation, reference and identification, description and classification, attribution and credit, reuse, licensing, and legal aspects, and the last one, re-execute with dependencies and execution environment, trying to map that to 2 different outputs, the FAIR for research software output, which you have briefly heard just an instance ago. The SEERS report, I haven't talked about that in this presentation. just a glimpse, what is the CIRS report? CIRS is for Scholarly Infrastructure for Research Software. It's recommendation for the infrastructure in the scholarly ecosystem to make it possible to make software source code a first-class output. And there are very nice recommendations that are targeting the infrastructures and not the people that are developing the software in the research space, but the infrastructure that will hold the software. Okay, so you have on the slide also a link to a checklist. The checklist is a location where you can see well, it's a more hands-on document that you can also comment if you want. I think I'm seeing that my activity needs to happen now. I'm going to try to move faster, but some basic information. Metadata is available in many places. It can be extrinsic metadata, which is all around in software development platforms, in catalogs and registries, in scholarly repositories, in package managers, in scholarly publishers. So you have metadata describing software, lots of locations. There's also sometimes, hopefully most of the time, there is also metadata in the source code itself. For example, those of you who develop software might have seen README files. This is a metadata file having some metadata in it, but it's not human readable. So you have in the intrinsic metadata that's in the code, these two different types of metadata, the one that's a README, the human readable, and the machine actionable. So in the machine actionable, there are different types of machine actionable files. CodeMeta.json is one of them, but you have lots of different package management files that are also machine actionable. I think that the citation.cff is also machine actionable. So this is important thing to think of, that you have also metadata in the code. And something that I preach for is keep your metadata in the code, because then your metadata is archived with the software. So you can have metadata everywhere, but if it's in the code, it will be kept with the code. Here you have a view, a fantastic view of the software heritage archive. If you haven't visited yet, archive.softwareheritage.org. It's really nice to browse code, archive code there. I invite you all to come and look around. I think that I'm almost up with my slides. So the CodeMeta initiative, again, for those who don't know, it's something that we base a lot of our recommendations in the Research Software Metadata Guidelines. It's a subset of schema.org with a large academic community. And a very important part of it is the crosswalk table mapping different vocabularies into CodeMeta. You can see a small part of this landscape on the slide, but the landscape of vocabularies describing software is very large. And we have a V3 that is out, but I'm not going to tell a lot about that. I'm going to skip that and come back to it during the activity. And just last thing about when you read the RSMD, the Research Software Metadata Guidelines, there's a high-level objective in each one of the aspects, and then there's actionable detailed recommendations. So taking all the information we had in around from different guidelines, there's a very thorough state-of-the-art in the recommendation. We created this each one of the recommendation with the identifier, as you can see here, and the priority level if you want to check it out. Last here, I promise this is the last line about the Research Software Metadata Guidelines. We have in the I've chosen the description and classification aspect. This is a copy of the checklist, of the part of the checklist that can help you with the hands-on questions to review if your software is well, in coherence with the guidelines. Okay, next, and for this topic, I have 2 slides, and I thank the team that works on the metrics which is led by Neil Chu Hong. And these two slides are about the metrics that are developed. And you will see these soon in the end of October, maybe in the beginning of November, in a very few days, few weeks. The metrics were to take the FAIR for Research Software principles and transform them into questions that we can answer, that we can test, something machine actionable. In this metrics template, you also find the FAIR for Research Software principle that it takes onto, and the RSMD recommendation. And just for one example of this guideline, of this metric with the CESDA software guidelines, is this table that you can see on the screen. And I will actually not read everything on the screen, but you can find all these fields and what is the assessment that needs to happen, and some comments about that. Okay. If you're interested in metrics, keep an ear open. The idea with this metrics, this first proposal, it's a proposal that will be shared with the community soon, and you can contribute to this community review. Last, before coming to the activity part, I know it's time to do some action. We have some resources on the slide that you can open. You have the link to the slides, you should know, in the notes. You can go and read the documents. You can go and see the videos. And the next steps for the research software metadata guidelines is to create a repository. So it will stay as a community effort. To have maybe a version 2 of the checklist, publish the metrics outputs, that's very soon. And also another step that's important to note for those of you who know some of the tools that are available out there to test and use the metrics. We have the Fuji tool, which is set to implement the FAIR impact metrics. Too soon. Okay, this is this is the end of this part with the information overwhelm. Now, if you have questions about the guidelines of the metrics, that's the time. We're going to, or you can write them down in the document for those online if you have questions. Yeah, I think that you need a microphone. Yes, go. Questions time.
Dan Katz from University of Illinois. Yesterday, I heard an interesting comment from Bob Hanisch, who was suggesting that having FAIR metrics would disincentivize submitters because they would almost never be able to get a perfect score, and they would be discouraged by the scores that they would get. I'm curious if ESC and the FAIR impact work has thought about this and has any response.
This is a very good remark. And I do agree that it might have the opposite effect. The answer that I can tell you that we are trying with FAIR, as you know, that to increase the fairness of a record, of an output, and those tools show the percentage of the fairness, and wanting to increase it, even if it's not a 100% score, might have the good effect. So we need to try and test it, not maybe force with the policies that force researchers to do it, but I think that's a good direction. I personally think it's a good direction, and the real good direction would be just to test to see with researchers, with people that are using it, because for now we are not seeing the users, we are not seeing the people that at the end will be using these metrics or guidelines. Yes, we have a answer maybe or a question.
Raphael Ritz, Max Planck Society. No, I don't have an answer, but I have a further caveat. I don't know exactly what the situation with respect to research software is, but for the FAIR metrics in general, we have now about a dozen different tools, if not more, that are trying to assess fairness in some quantitative way. And what turns out, if you now start to compare the outcome of those tools, the results can vary drastically. So not just by a bit, but drastically. And that by itself tells me that we as a community haven't really fully understood or agreed on what fair actually means when it comes to doing it and then assessing it. And in line of that situation, I would strongly advise not to use those scores in an absolute sense for anything that is of peripheral importance even, let alone research assessment. I think that is calling for disaster. But as you were also just saying, where these tools already today can prove useful is in the kind of feedback or recommendations that they give. And that is something that if you apply fair judgment, you can oftentimes understand, and then you realize, oh, here I should be more explicit, here I should use a different way of specifying certain things. That's helpful. But the score in and of itself, and then comparing it with a score maybe even derived through a different tool, is producing nonsense. Sorry.
Thank you for that comment. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to move to the next question. Yeah, go. I think that we have a next question until you get to the person in the back, and say that's a very important thing to acknowledge. So thank you for saying that comment.
So I'm sorry, I'll say more about fair metrics. This is David Elbert from Johns Hopkins University.
Hot topic.
And it's a hot topic. I mean, I think the reality is that people provide money and they want to see metrics. And so we have to accept that there will be some metrics at some point. But the reality is that one of the hardest things about metrics is that fair today is not fair tomorrow, right? We can measure things about implementations, but implementations will change. And depending what we ask of the data and the way that we look for data, what may count as fair today or a pretty good job on fair today will not be acceptable in 10 years. So a metric can't be static either. So it's just a hard problem.
Thank you very much. And I would say that the FAIR for research software guidelines is very high level, as I said before. And so the interpretation vary between disciplines, between communities. So it's the metrics that can result from that interpretation would result in different tools doing and assessing differently. So yes, that's a big caveat that we need to be sure that we know it. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. Any other question before I move to getting you to work? No? Yes, a question here. Yes, please.
Uwe Konrad, Helmholtz Association, Germany. We have opened a software award recently, and I think we have got some positive feedback to contribute to the evaluation of experts here. So thanks for that. And the question with respect to the fairness. So it's very hard to set up an award just about fairness. So usually you have to combine this with some scientific footprint or success. So we have categories. So the one category is the fairness, but on the other hand, you have this scientific things which you also have to measure and then somehow to combine. So that's why I think it would be good to have some, if you can combine both worlds, ideally.
Well, thank you for this comment, and I would say that these two concerns are very important, very different. The first one, the fairness, is more about the quality, the curation quality, and does nothing about the software quality. That it can be very fair, it can be 100% fair, and doesn't do anything. So that's a good concern also to raise. I don't know if that's possible to combine it with fair, because fair is really about fairness in the sense of a high level recommendations to make it findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, but nothing about the quality in that sense. And there is a task force, an EOSC task force, the European Open Science Cloud Task Force, that is talking about That's Neil. Hi, Neil. You could join us. Yes, excellent. Good to see you. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Are people able to hear me online and in person? Yeah, I'm taking that as a yes, because I think you're now muted, Moran. Yes, great. I was going to respond to some of the questions on the FAIR metrics, and yes, all of the people who pose those questions raise very good points. I'm one of the leads for the software metrics work in the FAIR Impact project, and the approach we're taking here is to set a set of metrics which are independent of the way that you, are abstracted away from the way that you would test these different metrics, to take into account what the last of the questions said, that what constitutes fairness will change over time. So it's more about trying to understand the method and then seek how we do implementations of those metrics as tests. What the second speaker said around the different tools, assessment tools coming up with very different scores is also very correct. We looked at 4 different tools that were available, and they did indeed come up with very different scores. And like everyone here, I think the key thing is that we shouldn't ever be looking at absolute scores, but we should be looking to see how well different pieces of research software meet what is deemed to be acceptable by the community in terms of fairness at any particular time. And that will not be an absolute score, but it will be a combination of things which will include the particular domain or discipline that they're in and the norms of that discipline. So the last thing is, as was pointed out, is we're looking at 2 particular disciplines with fair impact, the social sciences and the earth sciences as initial use cases to see how things differ as you look at things in different disciplines as well. So stay tuned for more on FAIR software metrics.
Thank you, Neil. I think that we have a last question here or comment. Let's keep it the last one, because you do need to work.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
So I was this is kind of a little bit more of a abstract question. In the software world, I'm curious if you're planning on distinguishing between like software completeness, but there are also pieces of code out there that are highly valuable, open source, reusable, fair, but they're not what you would necessarily call like a package, a full package. And I think a lot of coders really gravitate to that world versus like trying to find source code repositories for end-to-end solutions. So I was wondering in metrics if you think there's a place for distinguishing or measuring some level of completeness in those sources.
Thank you for the question. I think that maybe Neil can answer the metrics part, but before he answers the metrics part, I can say about taking care of the software that's maybe out there in a GitHub repository. So software heritage is actually archiving every software, not just research software, not even just software in research, and you can access all the code in software heritage. Then you can use a PID, which is a software hash identifier. And with this software hash identifier, you can put it in the metrics box that is testing the tool and see if this piece of software that is in software heritage is fair. What's the level of fairness of this piece of software? That's one of the options that you can then see. It's not a full package. Might be some different codes, fragments here or there, but this is a possibility. Maybe, Neil, you want to address the metrics part?
Hi, can people hear me again?
Yes.
Okay. So in the metrics part, currently we're proposing some metrics that go partially towards, I think, what you're saying there. So there are metrics to determine the development status of the code. So whether it is effectively alpha, beta, product, etc., supported, etc. And there are other ones that are to do with the relationships between, for instance, different parts of code that might form as a group a package. We don't have anything in the metrics at present which states the completeness of a piece of software. I think partly because it's very difficult to measure that. It's a pretty smooth continuum. What someone might consider to be complete as a package, another person might consider it to be missing something. So I think the answer from me is that there are metrics that are going addressing, I think, some of the reasons why you would want to understand the completeness of a piece of software, but nothing that is a direct metric for the completeness of a piece of software. Thank you, Neil.
So this would be our last question. Even if you have other questions, you can write them down in our collaborative note-taking document, and I hope that we can answer that later on. So moving towards the activity, which is unraveling the magic of software metadata. And the first question I'm going to ask you, and for that you have the pad for online participants, and for on-site participants, you can choose going to that note-taking document or discuss again with your neighbor. Do you care about software metadata in your current role? So I'm going to give 10 minutes to do it. What does it mean? It means, like the first question, why are you here? You need to discuss and share with a partner. Do you care about software metadata? Yeah, go. You can go. You have 4 minutes to go. One minute. This is time to stop your discussion. I'm very happy to see the discussion going on. If you want to keep a trace of what you've talked during your neighbor discussion, we have in the collaborative notes a table like this where online participants have already filled out something. Some on-site people also filled out. Please, if you want to have this written down somewhere, go to the collaborative notes and put the answers there. The bonus question was, what's your favorite metadata property? But unfortunately, we're not going to do this on site. I'm just going to share the slide that I've prepared for this, what's your favorite metadata property? If someone wants to share it in the room with their neighbor, you can go on and do it at the beginning of our next activity, which is activity 2. Now, here in this slide, it's another question that's on the collaborative notes. So I'm going to go directly to the collaborative notes. It's the same question, but a bit turn a bit differently. Let me go and show you. In my role, in your role, what can I provide to researchers and engineers to assist in the adoption of the guidelines and/or metrics? So it might be a support role, but it's not necessarily a support role. What can you do to make researchers and engineers use and adopt the guidelines? Not only engineers, maybe it's policymakers that need to adopt the guidelines or the metrics. So you might be against the metrics, so you can just discuss the guidelines, or you might do both. So there's a column for the ones that are writing it in. There's 2 columns, one for the guidelines and one for the metrics, thinking that might not be the same actions. Okay. You in the room, you can think about it and then discuss it with your neighbors. Yes, I have a question here. Is this the research guidelines? No, the research software metadata. It was for research software metadata guidelines. So the question was, I'm going to repeat it. Is it for the FAIR for research software principles? So here, it's guidelines in general, following some kind of guidelines. It can be the research software metadata guidelines that you have heard about while you were overwhelmed with information, but it can also be your institution guidelines. What do you need to assist them use these guidelines that are needed for software, for having better software metadata? Okay. Now you can go. You can talk. You can write it in. You can start with your favorite metadata property if you want. 3 minutes to go. 3 minutes.
I'm coming from the first community, so I never mess up directly of the community. They have a lot of stuff like that already in science, which also comes from the facts that scientists are more focused on their own work. That's out. They're only result oriented and not community oriented. Then this is it makes no
Back to me. Thank you very much for discussing. Thank you. Just a brief comment, and you can continue discussing because we have a last question. A last question, if time allows. But time allows, so you can continue discussing the activity too, or you can drive the conversation to do you or your institution organization follow software metadata guidelines, not the ones that we've discussed here in the session because there are very new ones, any guidelines. A bonus question to that is, what are the software metadata related practices? Again, we are trying to debunk metadata and what do we need to do for metadata in this scholarly ecosystem for software. So you can continue the discussion that you had just before, which is what can you provide? But I would like you to also interact about this question. And then this will be the last question because we're almost at time for coffee. So go talk and then talk some more during coffee break. Yes. Yes, go.
I think it's a bit
I'm going to stop you in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. One minute. 1 minute. Thank you very much for the discussion that you have had now. I'm very happy to see that people have discussed. I'm also very happy to see people that inserted answers into the collaborative notes. You can always open it later and answer the questions alone in your hotel room. And you should know that it will be kept then, if you like metadata, of course. The reason I'm putting this question back on is because we didn't deal with it. And I had a remark about this slide, about specifically what's in CodeMeta and not in CodeMeta. I know that I didn't have a lot of time saying what CodeMeta is and isn't, and why do we have these slides anyway. Just wanted to let you know that the CodeMeta is a community effort, and you can contribute to CodeMeta directly. There's a CodeMeta repository, which is gitlab.com/CodeMeta/CodeMeta. Very easy to remember. In this repository, there are issues that you can open if you want new metadata properties that are not in CodeMeta, like the ones here, which might be important, but maybe not in a CodeMeta.json file. And you can also contribute in the mappings, because there are the different mappings. I don't have a number in mind, but it's a lot. You can also contribute by reviewing mappings and providing mappings to your vocabulary into CodeMeta. Another thing to say about CodeMeta is that, and for that I'm not going to use this slide, I'm going to use this slide. Is a software heritage slide. It's my 2 minutes about software heritage. Is that in software heritage, you can save any code now. You can save your code, but you can save your neighbor's code or your institution's code, because like the Wayback Machine at archive.org, you can save any code that's accessible online. And something that we are doing is indexing the codemeta.json files, not only the codemeta.json files, but also the codemeta.json files. And this means that the metadata that's in the code is being indexed and can be searched upon. For now, we don't have user-friendly web UI option to search with this metadata, but it's in the roadmap. So in a few months, years, I hope as soon as possible, but it's hard, and there's a lot of content in software heritage. So keep in mind that your code meta, your metadata, is safe with the code by saving the code now. Okay. And with that, I'm going to the next steps for our interest group. I hope that you had fun here. I thank you all for being here. If you had fun and if you want to follow the work of the Software Source Code interest group, please join by just clicking on join the group. As I said before, for one of the questions, it doesn't mean that you need to come and meet us each month, because we are not doing that. We are just an interest group. And in the collaborative notes, there's a table to share if you want to see some themes discussed on our next session in the next plenary. If you want to volunteer and contribute by presenting something, that's also, and we'll be very happy to see if someone wants to. Again, the link is above at the corner of the slide. So please add your ideas and thoughts. Maybe like with the new FAIR acronym, which is full AI. What was ready? Full AI ready. Yes, thank you for full AI ready. Maybe the next session would be about AI, but I don't know. Maybe not. Will depends on your interest, because it's an interest group. Also, if someone here, we have 4 minutes left. Someone here wants to share a question, thoughts about this, exactly this thing. What's the next? Yes, I need a microphone here for that, please. And also proposing themes for the next working group. Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so I actually am not going to suggest anything. I'm going to thank Moran very much for running the session and making it a very interactive and exciting session.
Thank you, Dan. Excellent, thank you. On this note, we can go and grab a cup of coffee. If there's any other question, I'm still here, and find me. Yes, thank you.